A warm welcome to you on the Gavel. I'm Linda Akibi. Some Nigerians are troubled by the huge budget deficit, revenue shortages, and concerns about revenue leakages in several government ministries, departments, and agencies. Equally worrisome is the borrowings by the federal government from internal and external sources running up to trillions of naira. The Senate leadership on Monday, January 31st, had a meeting with members of the Committee on Finance and Revenue-Generating Agencies of Government to understand the difficulties in meeting yearly targets and also examine the failure of some of these agencies in remitting revenue to the Federation account. The overall budget deficit in the 2022 budget is 6.39 trillion naira, which represents 3.46% of the country's gross domestic product. This huge deficit is worrisome for a country with a budget size of 17.126 trillion naira, and there have been calls for the federal government to reduce deficit budgeting and minimize borrowing.
Federal Inland Revenue Service.
Finding solutions to these challenges is a reason for this gathering between the Senate and revenue-generating agencies in the country to explore means of increasing government revenue.
We are sick of revenue. We have no revenue. And I think when we sit here, we should talk the truth and say it as it is.
According to the chairman of the Senate Committee on Finance, several government agencies flout the Fiscal Responsibility Act by refusing to remit the correct revenue to the Federation account.
It is expected that any agencies that are partly funded by the federal government, such agencies are expected to pay 80% of whatever they accrue to them as operational surplus into the coffers of the government. But to our greatest surprise, we found out that the number of agencies that comply with this relevant section of the law is a far cry from the number we have that is expected.
But the revenue-generating agencies have several issues they want addressed. For instance, the Nigeria Immigration Service laments the outsourcing of its cooperations to service providers, while the Customs Boss is concerned that some clauses in the Finance Act will affect revenue collection.
We have consulted the legal luminaries, and the conclusion is that this act is confusing. And if stakeholders decide to take leverage of this, they can decide to say, we are not supposed to collect duties and levies.
The Committee on Finance, with the ministry, with you, we will look at this Finance Act where it is established beyond any reasonable doubt that there is need for us to amend. We will do so expeditiously. Probably that will be the fastest amendment that we will have to make because time is of essence. We wanted to collect money for January.
Considering the number of revenue-generating agencies in the country, the Senate President directs the Committee on Finance to engage with the agencies individually to understand challenges faced in meeting revenue targets. As a follow-up to the meeting between the Senate leadership and revenue-generating agencies, we had a chat with the Chairman, Senate Committee on Finance, Senator Solomon Adiola, to discuss some of the issues raised during the meeting, namely the failure of some MDAs to remit the correct revenue into government coffers, as well as the enabling laws setting up these agencies.
As you all aware that the President signed the appropriation bill into law on the 31st or 38th of December 2021. And while signing the bill, he makes some critical observation. And one of those critical observations he made was on the area of revenue. And that he alluded to the fact that the revenue has been moved up by 400 billion naira. And this was done by the National Assembly. And the fact remains that we are the ones who worked on that document. And being the chairman, Senate Committee on Finance, I looked at our revenue projection for 2021 budget, and compare it with our achievements in terms of actual revenue realized for 2021, and looking at the investigative hearing that was done in 2021 on all of this revenue generating agency, we observed that we can do better than what was projected. I'll give you an instance. In 2021, what was projected was about 500-something billion naira. And what was achieved by December of 2021 was about 1.4 trillion naira, which creates a gap of over 800 billion naira. And what the executive proposed in the 2022 budget was 1.8 trillion. And not putting into cognizance all the investigative hearing on some of these critical agencies of the government, which we worked on, and believing that there is no way this agency will not generate more. As of September of 2021, Nigerian Port Authority, for instance, have generated 350 billion. That means we are still left with October, November, December, which, if added to what they generate, will surpass their budget for 2021. When the executive will submit the budget estimates to us under the GOEs, they repeated the same budget for 2021 for NPA, which is 350 billion naira. And as at September of that year, they have generated more than 350 billion naira. So ordinarily, you will agree with me that as at December 2021, NPA cannot report nothing less than 400 to 500 billion. So if an agency will report 500 billion as at December, and we are saying that agency budget estimate is 350 billion, as a finance person, as a country that is looking for revenue, we should investigate. Where do you get this extra 150 billion from? And all of this, if you look at it, that's a whole lot of 100 billion. And other agencies inclusive. So the 400 billion is already there. So that is what we have done. And for us to now emphasize that and allow the agencies to know what we have done, that was why we called for this interactive session. And set among other things that it is no longer going to be business as usual. Having carried out our findings, these are some of our revelations, and these are the direction in which we are going. And that 1.8 was proposed, but we are targeting a minimum of 3 trillion naira for 2022.
Now, we observe that some agencies claim that their enabling laws allow them to spend a certain amount of their IGR, or doesn't even require them to remit the entire IGR into the Federation account. So it appears as if there's a discrepancy between these laws and the Fiscal Responsibility Act.
We have three categories of agencies and of funding. There are agencies that are fully funded by the federal budget. There are agencies that are partly funded from the federal budget. And there are agencies that are not funded at all. For agencies that are fully funded from the federal budget, that simply means that the federal government budget caters for both their personnel, overhead, and capital. So it is expected that any such agency should pay 100% of whatever they realize as revenue to the coffers of the government. For agencies that are partly funded, these are agencies that fall under the category of payroll and capital subventions or capital provisions. Such agencies are to, among other things, at the end of every financial year, whatever they realize as their operational surplus, 80% of that amount must be paid to the coffers of the government. There are agencies that are not funded at all, which include NPA, Central Bank of Nigeria, NDIC, all these big government corporations. 100% of whatever they generate, they keep and expend all their expenditure. But at the end of preparation of their financial statement, 80% of the operational surplus must be paid to the coffers of the government. So there is no discrepancies. It's just that many of these so-called agencies are taking advantage of some lack of proper internal control measures put in place and to divert government revenue through frivolous expenditure. And that is why we are planning to strengthen, among other agencies, the Fiscal Responsibility Commission, who is saddled with the responsibility of monitoring all this revenue and all this judicious application of government revenue. So we are doing that. We want to strengthen them. We want to give them enough capacity to monitor all these revenue generating agencies.
Now, speaking of strengthening the Fiscal Responsibility Agency, what is causing the delay in amending the law wholesale?
The act is being amended, but in peace. One, I know during the 2020 Finance Act, there are some certain provisions contained in the Fiscal Responsibility Commission which was amended. I chair this committee that worked on that bill, and I know for a known fact that this bill was actually amended. Secondly, as a committee, we work on the Fiscal Responsibility Act itself, and we work extensively. And I know also for a known fact that that bill was worked upon, and we have concluded work on it. And what we are trying to do is to present the report for the National Assembly or for the Senate to conclude. So definitely we are working on the act, and we are doing everything to ensure that the act works.
Do you think that the Holistic Act will be passed before the expiration of the 9th Assembly?
We have passed 2 finance acts now, and there are some certain provisions in the Fiscal Responsibility Commission that has been passed and signed into law by the President. So the holistic one which they are looking forward to is what we have worked on, which report will be presented during the course of the week for eventual passage into law by the Senate and concurrence from the House of Rep for the President, for the transmission and the appending, and for the President to append his signature. So it's been amended.
Now, beyond these meetings and engagements with revenue-generating agencies, the question has always been, how do you hold them accountable?
What we have been doing, and that is part of why we supported the idea of constant review of our existing laws, which we have been doing religiously. And that was what necessitated our action in trying to let the President every year review all aspects of our finance or law that can assist in trying to, reposition most of these agencies who have taken advantage of all the lacunas and all the gaps in our laws. But aside that, we as a National Assembly, we have decided to put up a constant interactive session, investigative hearing, that at the end of every year, we can nip them at the board in terms of their financial activities for every financial year. What was generated, what was expended, what was left behind, and how do you apply it, what was actually paid into the coffers of the government. So with that as well, we will use that aside law, amending the law, to also put them on their feet, to let them know that somebody is somewhere watching what they are doing on a day-to-day basis.
Is the Senate considering punitive measures for the heads of these agencies which allow these leakages to continue?
Part of what we discussed yesterday, and for me, the punitive measure is just very simple, is for them to be removed from office and also be prosecuted for violation of laws. But some school of thought think otherwise, and they believe that the punitive measure should be sanctioned to the extent of ensuring that that agency refund the money and also apply the principle of penalty to whatever they refund. That's another measures that we are proposing, and going forward, this is one area we will continue to look at to guide against all of these inadequacies in our laws, which these agencies have taken advantage of.
You're welcome back to the Gavel. Many Nigerians were outraged at the killing of 5-year-old Hanifa Abubakar by her teacher in Kano State in December 2021. The shocking incident was raised as a matter of urgent public importance in the House of Representatives during the week.
Her death shocked the nation. 5-year-old Hanifa Abubakar was kidnapped and killed in December 2021 by a teacher, Abdul Malik Tanko. Hanifa was abducted by a teacher who demanded ransom from her parents and later killed her. The police public relations officer in Kano, Aruna Kiawa, confirmed to reporters that Abdul Malik Tanko was indicted in the murder. He revealed that Abdul Malik confessed that he kidnapped the girl and took her to his house, where he contacted her relatives and demanded a ransom of 6 million naira. The said teacher later conspired with one Ashim Ishaku to kill the girl on December 18, 2021, having realized that the victim had recognized him. They allegedly buried Hanifa in a shallow grave within the school premises located at Kwanar Yangana in Tudun Murtala quarters.
Mr. Speaker,
a federal lawmaker in the House of Representatives raised a motion of urgent public importance on the killing of Hanifa Abubakar.
Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I assure this matter is treated urgently and to the logical conclusion, given necessary justice it deserves, such that punishment will deserve as deterrent to others while similar motives.
The House Committee on Customs concluded its investigations into allegations of extrajudicial killings by the Nigeria Customs Service.
There was an incident that happened not quite long before, not between customs, but some people came to attack the town. So people were thinking it was the same people that came in to attack them. So they came out in defense and they were trying to defend their people. And the process, customs shot as a defense, and the process, some people died. On the other side of GBR, in our own investigation, we discovered that it was as a result of the reckless driving of that driver, who is a custom officer, that led to the deaths of these 10 people.
According to the committee, the incidents which took place in Jibia local government area of Katsina State, Ibarakpa and Ishayin local government areas of Oyo State last year claimed the lives of 18 people and left many others injured. The House is seeking compensation for damages totaling 390 million naira and wants the officers involved prosecuted.
Worried.
Meanwhile, a federal lawmaker, Senator Bello Mandia, drew the attention of the upper chamber to the kidnapping of 38 members of his constituency on Sunday, 31st January 2022 by gunmen. He wants the federal government to intervene urgently as the insecurity in his state and some parts of the country have reached alarming levels. It's a sentiment shared by his colleagues.
Aware that the federal government had made frantic efforts in curbing the menace by setting up Operation Sharandaji, an interagency task force to tackle cases of banditry, cattle rustling, and kidnapping in Katsina State. Worried that the continuous security challenges and related attacks by bandits on towns, villages, communities in Foskar local government area have meted untold hardship on the people and have subjected the affected areas under serious survival threat.
Because what is happening now in Katsina, this shows that yes, we have to not only condemn it, we have to do something very serious. Because we cannot just sit down after declaring these bandits, terrorists, and then allow them again to continue with all these rubbish acts. So, Mr. President, we have to really look at it critically. I suggest that, yes, to me, I'm saying that, yes, the security agent, of course, maybe we assume that they are doing their best, but to me, I think that they need to do another best.
We want to see a difference because we have made a difference in terms of funding. I know funding alone will not be enough, but funding can make a difference, and we expect a difference in outcome.
Accordingly, the Senate urged the security agencies to rescue the 38 persons abducted by the gunmen in Ruan Godia. It also called on the federal government to send enough military personnel and fighter jets to apprehend the bandits and restore normalcy in the affected areas. Meanwhile, the Senate examined the report by its Committee on National Security on the NSAS protest, which was hijacked by hoodlums in Calabar on the 23rd and 24th of October 2020. Presenting the findings from its investigations, the committee chairman said public and private properties were vandalized by the hoodlums and the police and other security agencies were overwhelmed by the sheer number of the mob. It also listed more findings in the report.
That the protest took a different dimension where private homes, businesses, and the other public property of both the federal and state government were vandalized and looted. The health facilities were also not left out, as both private and public health facilities were attacked, vandalized, and looted.
The committee made several recommendations.
That the federal government should evolve and implement holistic reforms in the Nigeria police that aimed at employing more able-bodied personnel. 2, providing adequate vehicles to the various commands. 3, injecting more financial resources, provision of adequate and relevant arms, ammunition, and the other policing gadgets.
On the matter of compensation to some serving and past lawmakers and politicians, the Senate notes that the matter be forwarded to the state government.
Let's take a look at more happenings in the National Assembly during the week.
The Senate has passed through second reading a bill to stop landlords in the Federal Capital Territory from demanding yearly advance rent payment from tenants. The proposed legislation, which was sponsored by Senator Smart Adeyemi, is intended to reduce advance payments for new tenants to 3 months and thereafter proceed on monthly payment schedule. According to him, the bill will make life less stressful for low-income earners in the FCT, as he warns that yearly house rent payments breed corruption and huge inequality.
Mr. President, in the FCT, landlords demand between 1 to 3 years advance rent. This automatically adds a huge burden on the masses, subsequently giving rise to desperation and corruption of majority in this city. Advance payment for rent is indeed an outrageous tenancy arrangement, which is ungodly, un-African, un-Islamic, and un-biblical. Mr. President, even the United Kingdom and the United States, where we derive laws and system of governance, a tenant can only pay for where he has lived for a month. That is, it is a post-paid system, even in advanced economies of the world. This tenancy system, Mr. President, has continuously impoverished Nigerians who are salaried employees that can only pay rent after having received their monthly salary. That is when they are lucky to be paid as at when due. Distinguished colleagues, you may wish to know that many residents of the FCT are finding it difficult to cope with huge rent payments. And as an aftermath to this, Mr. President, many houses built within the city center for such purposes are empty.
With the policy where government has withdrawn participation in providing official quarters with the monetization, we are all aware young Nigerians who are gaining employment within the precinct of the FCT, for example, except if you have somebody who is within the city center, majority of them are actually within the outskirts, either in Nasarawa State, Niger State, or some parts of other states that are joining the FCT.
The issue of rental payment, either in advance, either in installment, is purely economical. It should be driven by market forces. Such market forces as availability of land, cost of building materials, income. If government wants to ameliorate the sufferings of the masses, government can go into housing schemes, mortgage schemes, housing credit facilities, not control the business of private individuals in an emerging African democracy.
Now, this is where we call it a day on this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us and see you again next week.